All right. Hello and welcome aboard the Gallant Says podcast. It is Tuesday, May 21st, 2024 at 7:15 p.m. I believe the Houston Astros game tonight against the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, of California, of the United States of America, of North America, formerly of Pangea, of planet Earth, of the solar system, of the Milky Way galaxy, of the universe, are playing against our beloved Houston Astros tonight. But per James Espinosa on X, Christian Javier is already having a meltdown. Look, after last night's Astros game, I feel like we should put them in timeout. Is that fair? So for tonight, they're in timeout. When we're done with this show, I'm going to go watch my beloved Boston Celtics, who hopefully won't have a meltdown of their own in the Eastern Conference Finals opener against the Indiana Pacers tonight. I touched on this on today's radio show with Joe George on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5, but since we were on remote at the occasional invitational at a golf course up in Porter, Texas. What's the golf club's name? Sorry, I am so bad when it comes to recovering after a long drive. Highland Pines. It's a very nice golf course. But got back, took a nap, and since we were not able to go and do video edition of today's show because we were on remote, I knew that you people had to see how pretty I look today with my fake knockoff $15 Pebble Beach polo that I wore to that golf tournament. And we have to talk again about what Framber Valdez did last night. Paul, you're beating a dead horse. Perhaps. But if there's no record of me blabbing about this on the internet with my pasty face behind it, then did I ever really talk about it? I said this on today's show. I don't have a small human child. I don't know if I'll ever have a baby. I don't know if I'd be a good dad, to be perfectly honest. Maybe that means that fear of responsibility, that I'm a good dad. But as a bachelor without a child, I feel like I have empathized more with parents last night watching Framber than I ever have. I went to Port Swing Pub, which is in the Heights, to watch last night's Astros game with a couple of my friends. 50-cent wing nights, fantastic. Had some spicy garlic wings. And the Astros offense was kicking the shit out of the Angels. The score was 6-1, and I figured, okay, I can drive home, watch the rest of this game, maybe take care of some things, pay my taxes, which I filed an extension for, send out my New Year's cards, which I haven't entirely finished yet. Many things that I've procrastinated. But I get back and I look at the score, and I see that the Astros are down 7-6. You look away for 1 second, and Framber Valdez is capable of blowing a 5-run lead against a god-awful franchise and the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, who are without Mike Trout, and I can't name another player on their team off the top of my head because of how bad they are. It happened that quick. I mean, I imagine that's just like being a parent. You're watching your kid, you look away for one moment, and the next thing you know, little Timmy's blown off his hands because he's been playing with fireworks. Or perhaps he's made himself a bleach cocktail and you're about to go to the emergency room to get that bad boy pumped out. That's the Framber Valdez experience. I've talked about this a couple of times on the radio show. Sometimes players have one awesome season and they never reach that level again. And I'm starting to feel that way about Framber's awesome 2022, where he had the major league record for consecutive quality starts in a row. 22. An incredible stretch of consistency from Framber, especially considering how poorly he had pitched in the playoffs before, specifically the World Series against the Atlanta Braves. But you look at his numbers over the course of his career, and you see definitely a plus pitcher. But is he a pitcher that is worthy of a long-term extension, especially when you consider what was said after the game? Joe Espada and Framber Valdez and Yainer Diaz all said that Framber went away from the game plan during that fifth inning where the Angels scored 7 runs. Said Valdez through an interpreter. Yainer did a really good job calling pitches. I was the one that decided to try and change the game plan. I had to deal with the consequences. Okay, at least he's falling on the sword there, said Yainer Diaz. I could try to force him to throw a certain pitch, but he knows how he feels and how his pitches feel. He makes the decision. This is the first time this has happened, but maybe as a catcher, I should have forced him to throw certain pitches. Now, keep in mind, there's been some inconsistency when it comes to who's catching Framber Valdez over the course of the year. First off, you had Framber in spring training saying that he wanted to use the pitch comm to call his own pitches with Yainer Diaz behind the plate. He started off the year, regular season, after that did not work, past 1 game in spring training, with Yainer Diaz as his catcher for 2 games, Victor Caratini as his catcher for 3 games, and back to Yainer Diaz for the last 2. A man of routine, that's probably not the best plan for him, but hey, I don't know if it's very easy to work with Framber Valdez, and I'm beginning to get the sense that it might never be possible to accommodate all of Framber Valdez's many ticks. Ticks that the Astros have been aware of and that Framber's been aware of for a while. So even if he has, per Mike Trout, some of the best stuff in the game, you gotta wonder if he's worth giving a contract extension to. And sure, he could pitch better the rest of the year, and this could be a bad nightmare that was just a one-day thing. But I'm looking at the track record. In 2018 and 2019, after he struggled to throw strikes and had bad body language, he decided to seek the help of Dr. Andy Nunez. It got better, I guess. During the 2020 season, his numbers are pretty good if you take a look at 2020. 10 starts, 5-3, an ERA of 3.57 after in 19, an ERA of 5.86. 2021, pretty good year, but then the postseason begins. He gets shelled by the White Sox. He gets shelled twice by the Braves in the World Series, a 7.78 ERA. And again, he was great in 2022. He was 3-0 in the postseason with a 1.44 ERA. Over the course of the regular season, he's 17-6 with a career-best 2.82 ERA, 194 strikeouts, which he was actually able to top last year with 6 more, 200 in about 3 less innings of work. It was a great season. But last year, he was shelled by the Twins and the Rangers in the postseason with a 9.0 ERA in totality. He had those meltdowns against the Seattle Mariners and the Texas Rangers where he threw at a batter right afterwards, right after giving up home runs. Not a good look. And you got to wonder about all the other things that it seems are signs that he is not the most reliable pitcher mentally. He changes his look, braid extensions, the mustache, slimming down before the season, his OCD particularity about jerseys. And while I know that Framber has great stuff, is a good pitcher for a park like Minute Maid Park because he gets so many ground balls, I'm really beginning to wonder if there is going to be a really tough decision to be made at the trade deadline. My co-host on today's radio show, Joe George, Everyday's radio show, suggested trading him. And it does feel like a real strong reaction to just one night, right? But if you think about how much he'd likely cost and how inconsistent he's largely been outside of the 2022 season, is it possible that we've seen the best of Framber Valdez already? And seeing as the Astros do have a lot of arms that theoretically will be healthy in the coming months, maybe it's Luis Garcia, maybe it's Lance McCullers, maybe it's Jose Urquidy, even if Framber has the best stuff on the team, is this perhaps an opportunity to try and reload your farm system, which is not very good, because you have that surplus? I mean, we talked about that surplus last year and going into this year, and clearly that wasn't the case. You know, you brought Justin Verlander back at last year's trade deadline, but I feel like it's worth entertaining, trading him for prospects given the surplus of depth. And yeah, it's an extreme statement to make, but I'm just not feeling that with Joe Espada running the show, with Yainer Diaz behind the plate, that they're going to be able to get him to listen. I mean, at least he's acknowledging it after the game, but do you really believe that Joe Espada is capable of getting Yainer to listen? Or Yainer Diaz is? I mean, it feels like we've seen a couple of mini rebellions already this year. And look, the clubhouse for the Houston Astros, it's not what it was last year. Martin Maldonado isn't here anymore. Hector Neris isn't here anymore. Michael Brantley isn't here anymore. These are three guys that were considered to be leaders of the clubhouse. So with that void, you got a guy in Framber who is doing his own thing a lot. If he's doing his own thing a lot, I mean, when is he ever going to do what you want him to do? And sure, there's miscommunication that happens, I would imagine, between pitchers and catchers and pitchers and managers and pitchers and pitching coaches all season long. But, I mean, last night was the worst of the worst for Framber Valdez. And I'm just really wondering about his place here in Houston long term. More comments. Let's take a look. Twitch.tv/Gallant says, or on youtube.com/Paul Gallant. YouTube does not seem to be picking up as many views as we normally get. That's kind of annoying. On Twitter, @Gallant says. Let's scroll through. Shrimp Boat Dana asks if I have an HOA meeting. No, I believe that's tomorrow. Andrew Ramirez says, I think Framber needs to be sent down to figure stuff out. He can't control his emotions, and I think he needs to clean his head. I do not think he deserves a contract. I enjoy your show, Paul. I like your humor. Thank you for brown-nosing at the very end there. Look, you can't send him down to the minors, but I don't think that the Astros should be above having Framber skip a start as punishment. I mean, he's even acknowledging not following the orders. Maybe that gives him a little bit of grace in the eyes of Joe Espada, in the eyes of his teammates and in the clubhouse, but come on. There's got to be some sort of consequences here, right? And it's weird. Baseball, there does seem to be a collective, it's just one game. You hear it from fans a lot, and I know a lot of people who were maybe pushing back about how strong both Joe and I's takes were on Framber Valdez today. They were highlighting that. And sure, that's fair. But I'm looking at him, and I'm just feeling like he's a guy that's never going to buy into the way things are currently run. If he's already been rebelling a couple of times this season, what's going to make him fall back in line? Getting embarrassed by the Angels? I mean, you'd hope that would be the case, and maybe it will. There's certainly plenty of time, but I imagine now you got to put some sort of clock. Have it run until the All-Star break and trade deadline, and if things aren't better and the inconsistency is still there, you got to at the very least think about it. Because, I mean, he's never going to have more value with a year and a half left on his contract. There's going to be some team that wants him. And honestly, he'll probably pitch well for that team because he'll probably focus a little bit more wherever he goes. Or maybe he'll flounder because he's away from this Astros clubhouse. Whatever the case, there's issues here. And it's really infuriating to see that not only did he just melt down as quickly as he did, I mean, it was insane how quick things escalated. Allows a single, walks a guy, 3-run homer. Then after that, he allows a single, 7-pitch at bat, single, homer. I mean, insane. Boom, 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 boom. 3 pitches in a row. And the next thing you know, the Astros are all of a sudden down 8-6. I know we're overreacting to one outing, but if you take a look at Framber Valdez's entire track record with the Houston Astros, the inconsistency is maddening, and it should at the very least make you say, I don't really want to pay this contract, if not walking away from the negotiating table entirely. Largo Ghost says, Paulie, MF, White Pants. Yeah. White Pants season's back, guys. White Pants season is back. John Ryan. Paul, my Irish brother. Schlante. Tora McJohnson says, should have kept Maldi. Stat nerds in shambles. That's really the only reason I wanted to keep Maldi. To make those people mad. Toro continues saying Dusty was right to prioritize Jake Myers over Chas. Maybe he was, though this is a limited sample size with Jake Myers, and we know that last year, all year, Chas McCormick was really, really good when he actually got the opportunity to play. John Ryan says the Astros are a bloody mess. Andrew Ramirez says it should have kept Nearest, Maton, and Stanek and not let them go. The bullpen would be a little bit better, but I also think you got to look at the big problems for the team. Has it been the middle relief, the guys that have been called up because of the lack of depth that the Astros have due to injuries? No, I mean, the back of the rotation, the back of the bullpen. Not the back of the bullpen. What the fuck am I talking about here? Again, clearly not a baseball expert, but the key arms in the bullpen, Brian Abreu, Josh Hader, Ryan Presley, and the highly paid arm that you don't trust, Rafael Montero, they've stunk too. Montero allowed a home run. First batter he faced last night. Classic Rafael Montero show. I mean, that's what I expect whenever I see him out there. Maybe the Astros would have been able to claw their way back in down just 2 runs instead of 3 runs. But the bullpen has been an issue. The starting pitching has dealt with a lot of injuries, and they've had to work with it. But, Framber Valdez, he's not your best pitcher anymore, is he? Can you really say that? He might have the best stuff, but he's been so inconsistent, and 2022 is really the one year where you looked at him as potentially being the ace of this staff. I don't know if it really matters who's ace and who isn't, but this does not seem like a guy, now 31 years old, that you want to keep around long term. Anyway, youtube.com/Paul Gallant. That's how you can subscribe to this channel, like this channel, and see all of our live streams whenever we do them. We're trying to make this a daily thing. I've been saying this forever and ever, and I apologize for that, okay? But you can also comment on twitch.tv/Gallant Says, on X @Gallant Says, and on top of that, on, I believe, Instagram @SportsGallant. All right. Speaking about our mentals, I saw an interesting article in the Houston Chronicle today about another athlete that's been dealing with some mental health issues. I'm talking about Simone Biles. I saw an article in the Houston Chronicle about her last week as we get ready for the 2024 Summer Olympics. And it talks about her battles with mental health issues that led to her withdrawing from several events during the 2021 Olympics in Tokyo. And she got a lot of backlash for that. From the article of passage, quote, Biles tried to take all the outsized attention before Tokyo in stride. At some point, the pent-up emotions and aggressions she felt caused her to crack, in quotation marks. Biles was in therapy before Tokyo, but had paused treatment before heading overseas. With millions watching, she walked off the floor after one wayward vault in the women's team final and called her family at home in Texas. She pulled out of a handful of finals before returning to earn a bronze on the balance beam, a medal the most decorated gymnast in the history of the sport has called one of the most important of her career. The twisties. In the moment, when I was in Seattle, I had one criticism, and I'm sure it was not met particularly well in a city that is insufferably progressive. I felt she should have withdrawn before the Olympics if she was feeling any of this and given another American gymnast a chance to compete. She was only, 24 at the time? The most decorated gymnast ever? Why not let somebody else have an opportunity? You'd probably be able to get back in your late 20s, right? I don't know when you become washed up as a gymnast. But at the same time, seeing as she's the most decorated gymnast ever and one of the best American Olympians ever, I felt like she deserves some slack because she's really good at what she does. And to her credit, even though she withdrew from several events, she did try to compete again. She did get that bronze medal. She feels in this article that she's normalized getting mental help for others, saying, quote, she's lost count of the number of people who have told her, because of you, I'm getting the proper help that I deserve. Said Biles, as unfortunate as it was. It's exciting because I know that by speaking out, it's helping other people. And that's what I've always wanted to do inside this sport and outside this sport. She's Houston. I'm biased. We all should be a little bit biased, right? But it's awesome that she returned and did do that last event, and we'll see what happens in this year's Olympics. I do enjoy watching gymnastics. Call me creepy. Shut up. I think it's a really hard thing to do. I can't believe that people are able to do all these fucking crazy flips and the rope things and all that stuff. Okay? It is pretty impressive shit. It's more entertaining than swimming. I know a lot of people are focusing on swimming. No, the gymnast stuff is the coolest stuff at the Olympics. And basketball, too. All those are the things I focus on. Oh, Paul, you're a creep. Fuck you. Anyway. I like that she returned and actually did that event. Mental health struggles, I think, are something that we're all dealing with to various degrees. I see a therapist, for example. But I don't think that it should give us an excuse to leave our responsibilities behind. The hard reality is that most of us don't have the opportunity to do that. We don't have that as an option if we're dealing with mental health issues. We can't walk away from our job for a long period of time without perhaps getting fired, even if that is something that is frowned upon these days. You can imagine that you're going to put yourself in a bind at work if you walk away and don't do your job. So to keep our jobs in order or our lives in order and our relationships in order, you do have to eventually get back off the floor and keep fighting. So that's why I love what Biles did there. I know a lot of people want to criticize those who are very open with mental health struggles because it does feel like these days everyone is talking about their mental health struggles. I think we all want to be seen as someone who's overcoming things. And some people really are overcoming stuff. But there's also people like Ben Simmons, a millionaire who seemed to be using his mental health as a shield while earning millions and millions of dollars. Or perhaps as we transition into our next topic, we're not stepping away from a job like Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo did last year. We've seen a lot of Lina Hidalgo over the last couple of days in the wake of this derecho. She's supposed to lead emergency responses as the Harris County Judge. In case you do not know who she is, I'm going to give you something courtesy of the Harris County government website. Judge Lina Hidalgo is the head of Harris County's governing body. She is the first woman to be elected county judge and only the second to be elected to the commissioner's court. The county judge is the presiding officer on the commissioner's court. As the main governing body of Harris County, the commissioner's court plays a critical role that is part administrative, part legislative, and part judicial. Its many responsibilities include adopting a budget, setting tax rates, calling for bond elections, building and maintaining county infrastructure such as roads and bridges, and overseeing county courthouses, jails, libraries, parks, and the Harris County Flood Control District. By state law, the county judge is also the county's director of emergency management, leading the Harris County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. In addition to her formal duties, Judge Hidalgo plays an important advocacy role for the county. So there is the definition online. She took office in 2018 after narrowly beating out Ed Emmett right after Hurricane Harvey. And Ed Emmett, side tangent. I always thought that Ed Emmett was fucking obsessed with saving the Astrodome. And I always thought that obsession was ridiculous, especially when people voted to destroy it. And then one day on the Gallant at Night radio show, back at the Texans flagship, I called Ed Emmett a boob for his Captain Ahab-like monomania with what to do with the Houston Astrodome and why we shouldn't demolish it. To Ed's credit, he called into my radio show on the spot, and we actually had a nice conversation. I still think he's crazy for that obsession with that Astrodome, which is overrun by cats, rats, bats, and asbestos. But I remember that our conversation was nice, even though I said that he's crazy and that I still feel he is a boob for that obsession. I also know that there were moments on the show where I said I would push for Ed Emmett's replacement. And ironically, he did, I thought, a pretty admirable job in the wake of Hurricane Harvey, to the point where I probably should have changed my mind. But Lina Hidalgo, to go back to her, beat out Ed Emmett in 2018 on November 6th of that year. And as stated in that little description on the Harris County website, she became the first woman and Latina elected to the office of Harris County Judge. But to bring it back to what I was talking about and how she relates to Simone Biles and Framber Valdez in this episode of the Gallant Says podcast that's all fucking over the place. For those who don't know, she stepped away from her office for 9 weeks last fall to battle depression. August 7th, she went public with her health issues, announcing she'd checked into an inpatient facility in late July to be treated for clinical depression. She hoped she would be back on the job by early September, but September 14th, she said she'd be extending her leave of absence until October 2nd. So Precinct 1 Commissioner Rodney Ellis stepped in for Hidalgo and presided over Harris County Commissioner's Court meetings. On September 19th, she missed the passing of a $2.4 billion budget and a slightly decreased tax rate for the upcoming year. Supposedly, this meeting was notably amiable. Interesting. We'll get back to that in a moment, with commissioners from both parties praising the collaborative budget process. Collaborative. Another word that we'll get back to. But anyway, on September 27th, right before Hidalgo came back, 5 people filed a lawsuit with Harris County District Court to remove Lina Hidalgo from office, saying she's not able to do her work as Harris County judge because of health concerns. Yeah, she literally wasn't doing her job from July through October 2nd. 9 weeks. That's 2+ months. Harris County Judge Office spokesperson Brandon Marshall called the lawsuit meritless and an absolute joke. Well, she's not at work. My take, if you've watched this podcast enough, is that regardless of party affiliation, if you want to serve the people of the United States, you've got to go all in. It should be your number one priority. The good of the many outweigh the good of your family or you. With great power comes great responsibility and also comes great sacrifice. And if you're in a spot where you can't do your job, you should step aside and let somebody else be elected to do your job. If you can't serve office for a 1/6 to a 1/5 of a year, shouldn't you have to step aside for someone else who's elected? I'm sure our laws don't work that way, but that seems pretty logical. Perhaps more logical is my take on the Gallant Says podcast in the past, that if you're a politician, you shouldn't be allowed to be married. You shouldn't be allowed to have kids. You should have to focus on the job. That would keep the career politicians away, you would think. But hey, I'm just a man who talks about sports for a living and occasionally crosses over into this. Hidalgo came back to office in last October, and we've seen a lot of her over the last couple of days. In a group chat I'm in, I saw this in response to a classic Lina Hidalgo comment that I made on our chat. Quote, "You know who really hates Hidalgo? Conservative white men." And I thought long and hard after reading that. Maybe I'm guilty of that. I don't know her personally. I don't really have a reason to be mad at any politician, posteracho, given that I've had power and electricity back since Friday night. But what I do know about Lina Hidalgo is that she's a millennial like me, and that, like me, she's a little basic. And what's wrong with being basic, right? You guys appreciate me being basic. But an example of that, a vacation photo that she posted to Twitter on March 20th of 2022, complete with a deep quote. I'm going to show it for you right now. "I'm not one of the people that pretends like we don't need breaks." Well, she ain't pretending. She has clearly said to all of us that she needs breaks. But many times, I plan a break and urgent things come up. Humble brag. Relieved that this is the time I was able to make my ski vacation happen. It's a nice vacation picture, right? Now, I'd advise any politician, regardless of politics, just don't post vacation pictures. Don't talk about vacations. And honestly, maybe wear a hat over your head, Ted Cruz, if you're, I don't know, about to board a flight for Mexico in the midst of some shit going on in Texas. Just a thought. It's just a thought. But Hidalgo's a little basic. Again, I'm a little basic. I've been off Instagram since April 30th, and I'm jonesing to get back on that thing so I can, well, let's be honest, sort of be a creep and slide into people's DMs. I'm looking for a wife. Don't hate me because I'm me. But earlier this month, I saw a video and I bookmarked it, and it's a video of Lina Hidalgo after flooding that took place on the San Jacinto River. And I mean, just like George Washington, I guess, did when he was crossing the Delaware, Lina Hidalgo did a very good job to make sure that people know that she's out there taking care of business.
Hi everyone, we're out here along the east fork of the San Jacinto River. The water is still rising, so it'll crest
So you get the premise here, right? You can barely hear what she's saying. She's basically just in a motorboat looking out and doing essentially the same thing that you might have done when you were a kid on a long road trip before the advent of smartphones. Or maybe if you get motion sickness like me and you would potentially puke whenever you read a book or play on your Game Boy on that long trip. You're just looking out and saying, hey, a sign. Hey, a sign. Hey, a license plate from another state. So she's doing essentially the same thing there in the midst of the flooding. She wants everyone to know that, hey, she's taking action. She's taking, she's being proactive, trying to, help the people of Houston in the midst of an emergency. All politicians do this, right? They're always trying to look like they give a shit. And that's powerful imagery right there. Sitting in a boat, going through all of that crazy flooding on the San Jacinto River. And it's something that she didn't stop doing over the course of this month. I mean, you can go back to the day before where both she and Mayor John Whitmire were doing press conferences, dueling with one another at the same time. Let's enhance this. Enhance. They're doing press conferences at the same time, as you can see in that screen graph from ABC 13. Well, not exactly something you want. A couple of days ago, on the 17th, which is the day after the derecho took place, in the midst of a John Whitmire press conference, Hidalgo, once again, saw the cameras, saw an opportunity, and maybe got a little basic.
The collaboration is strong. It will be in the days to come.
We promised the Spanish media I'd go after you, so let me just repeat my remarks in Spanish.
Could I
Mayor.
yield to the commissioner
Mayor,
for a moment?
there's an impact in all 4 counties, and so whenever we have an impact on one county, the commissioner joins, but all 4 counties have been impacted, and I don't feel comfortable with giving special treatment. Everybody was notified that you as the mayor and I as the county judge are speaking. I'm happy for them to join, but at least if you want her to speak, let me do the duty to.
You look over to the side right there. She's out of the frame right now, but the side language translator, the ASL translator, her facial expressions throughout this, she's basically not only interpreting what's being said at the podium, but also is interpreting an argument between 2 politicians to everybody watching on TV. It is hilarious to me.
You as the mayor and I as the county judge are speaking. I'm happy for them to join, but at least if you want her to speak, let me do the duty to the Spanish constituents.
Well, I'm just glad I made I'm glad I made the approval list.
Oh, Mayor, this is a disaster. This is not the time.
Oh, she got him!
So
She got him! This is a disaster. This is not the time. See, that is something that you can put into your re-election campaign video. Mayor, this is a disaster. Now is not the time. You just clip out everything before, everything afterwards, because you look like a fucking badass when you operate that way. This is politics 101 from a sports talk show host that is talking out of his ass a whole lot. But again, really the main point is here, Lina Hidalgo, 33 years old, a couple years younger than me. She's an opportunist when it comes to social media, imagery, and all good politicians are. And she's a little basic with that, but hey, I can't hate. I'm a little basic myself. I want to go back to that comment that I read from my group chat a little bit earlier. The comment, in case you forget it, was this. You know who really hates Hidalgo? Conservative white men. I can't speak for all conservative white men, but I think, speak for her government peers in that it seems she's not well liked. And that's somewhat understandable because she's linked to a controversy that I'm far too lazy to do super amounts of research into. But basically, concerns were raised over a contract that was given to a company hired to do COVID-19 vaccine outreach. Ultimately, the county terminated the $11 million contract, but 3 of Hidalgo's staffers were indicted by the Harris County District Attorney, Kim Ogg, over this contract. And on November 9th of last year, the Texas Rangers issued some search warrants. I assume stuff like this happens all the time. Contracts are awarded, and perhaps they're awarded in a nefarious way, regardless of political party. But I've discussed the back and forth between Hidalgo and soon-to-be former Houston Attorney General Kim Ogg in a previous episode. Kim Ogg has handed that investigation over to Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's office. For those who don't know, Ken Paxton is conservative. I'd imagine you'd have to be really pissed off with somebody to cooperate with someone in a different party against someone in your own party. So, it doesn't seem like she gets along with the soon-to-be former District Attorney of Houston. And on top of that, you can also see why John Whitmire maybe doesn't like her so much either. Why he might distance himself from Hidalgo. There was an article in April that I remember reading from KHOU's website where Hidalgo called out Whitmire for not meeting with her, which might be the reason for the dueling press conference image that I showed a little bit earlier. And the video clip we just played where she said, "It's an emergency. Now is not the time for this." Now, to be fair to Hidalgo, Whitmire should meet with her, even if he doesn't like her. And even if he doesn't want to be attached to her because people that are on her staff are being investigated for corruption. It's his fucking job, but it seems like this is the norm everywhere for politics in 2024. People can't put their personal differences aside, and it leads to chaotic moments like this one that we saw last Friday at a House Oversight Committee meeting. At a House Oversight Committee meeting. Here it is.
I think you know what you're here for.
Well, you the one talking about.
I think your fake eyelashes are messing up.
No, ain't nothing.
Hold on.
Listen.
Order. You agree to strike your words?
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Green agrees to strike her words.
I believe she
Chair
should apologize.
recognizes
No.
Mr.
She
Perry.
should apologize.
Okay, hold on. Then after Mr. Perry's going to be recognized, then Ms. Green
I'm not
has 4 minutes and
apologizing.
21
Well,
seconds.
then you're not
reserve the right to
striking your
object.
words.
I am
Mr.
not
Kerr.
apologizing.
Just to better understand your ruling, if someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct?
A what now?
Chairman, I make a motion to strike those words.
I don't think that's
Hold
a
on.
I'm
parliament.
trying to find clarification on what quality.
Chairman,
I didn't-
motion to
I had
strike
no
those
idea
words.
what you just said.
We're not gonna do this. Look, you guys earlier literally just
You
Y'all
just
did it first.
voted to do
Y'all did
it.
it first, so you
You
don't want to
just
talk about
voted
it.
to do it.
Order.
Hell yeah. Born in the USA. I was born in the USA. I mean, this is just what I expect out of everybody in Congress and local politics. The personal shit gets in the way and everyone starts yapping at each other. Believe there was some cusses thrown in that back and forth that we saw between a couple of people on the House Oversight Committee. It sucks. Like, this is kind of what you expect out of all these people. They can't put the personal stuff to the side. And maybe Whitmire should put the personal stuff to the side. Maybe Kim Ogg should put the personal stuff to the side for the sake of party. I don't know. I don't care. And I don't know if all white conservative men hate Lina Hidalgo, to go back to my friend's quote. Maybe they do. But as a counter to that point, which seems to be a generalized broad brush stroke, I'll ask this. Is someone who's younger than you, embroiled in a scandal that has taken off months from her job for mental health and doesn't seem to work well with others, is that person fit for office? I think that all of us would agree, regardless of party affiliation, that they're probably not. But hey, I hope that Lina Hidalgo does her best to clean things up after a despacho. I love that word. Honestly, I can't get over it. I even said it wrong. Over this derecho. It's such a sick name. Anyway, guys. There you go. There you go. Bear Brother 123 asks, why the fuck do reporters like to step in 3 feet of water when we can clearly see a clear road in the same camera shot? Yes, I agree. People love the dramatic imagery. If you're a TV person and you're standing in the middle of floodwaters, or if you're on a boat, it makes you look like you're a badass. You're not afraid of anything. And really, the only reporters who are badasses are the people who are in the midst of war. If you watch that movie Civil War, you'd probably agree on the fictionalized depiction of it, but all the folks in Ukraine or in Israel right now that are covering what's going on in Gaza, they're wearing helmets and shit. There's guns being fired everywhere and rockets getting launched. Those are the actual badass journalists. And here's the thing, like most of the imagery that those guys see don't even make it to TV or to the gram, if you will. But yeah, TV reporters love doing that. And politicians love doing it too. We're all basic when it comes down to it, you know? I'm not even hating on Lina too much for that. I think if I was in that spot, I'd probably do the exact same fucking thing. But it is what it is. It's exactly the way that you laid it out. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up today's edition of the Gallant Says podcast. Make sure, if you haven't already, to subscribe to my YouTube channel at Paul Gallant or on Twitch, twitch.tv/Gallant Says. We're still trying to figure out what the best time to do this every single day is. Optimally, we'd have done this a little bit earlier today. You can also get it after the fact in audio form on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Until tomorrow, we're going to be at East River 9. Check that. On Friday, where the hell are we going to be? We're not on Friday on East River 9. Tomorrow, we're going to the Highway Cantina. So come out and join us. In the meantime, if you can't make it out to the Highway Cantina, check me out with Joe George tomorrow from noon to 3 on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Until then, and another episode of the Gallant Says podcast tomorrow, I am merely Paul Gallant. So long, farewell, and have yourselves a